There was once a man who believed goodness would protect him. He forgave too quickly, gave too much, and stayed too long in places that drained his soul. He thought that by being kind, the world would return his kindness. But people don't return what they can take for free. And the gentlest among us bleed first. He kept believing that empathy could fix cruelty, that love could reform betrayal, and that patience could soften manipulation. He thought his light would heal others, but all it did was attract the hungry, the ones who saw his softness as opportunity. They took, they lied, they drained, and when there was nothing left, they called him too emotional and walked away without guilt. Years later, I met him again, but he wasn't broken anymore. He was quiet, sharp, and unapologetically calculated. He told me something that rewired my entire mind. The world didn't change. I did. I stopped being easy to break. That sentence haunted me because it wasn't just his story. It was mine. And it might be yours too. Right now, there are two versions of you. The first is kind, loyal, and endlessly forgiving. The second is silent, focused, and untouchable. The first explains itself. The second doesn't need to. This isn't about becoming cruel. It is about understanding why good people are destroyed and how the ones who survive learn to be good and protected at the same time. He was raised to believe that if you give enough, forgive enough, and love without limits, life will return it. That belief is the first illusion that destroys the strong. Because most people don't reward purity, they reward perception. And perception belongs to the powerful. People don't see your intentions, they see your results. You may sacrifice everything for them, but to their eyes, you are still the one who bends. And in a world built on dominance and survival, bending looks like weakness even when it is done in love. Look at history. The men and women remembered as great were rarely the kindest in their time. They were the ones who knew when kindness served them and when it didn't. Marcus Aurelius wrote about being just, not soft. Lincoln freed millions, but waged the bloodiest war in American history to do it. Mandela forgave his captors after he had already won. Forgiveness without leverage is surrender. Forgiveness with leverage is grace. The man stopped seeing kindness as a virtue and started seeing it as a tool. One that worked beautifully in the right hands and got him destroyed in the wrong ones. He didn't become unkind, he became selective. And in that one shift, he became dangerous. Weakness doesn't begin in the body, it begins in the mind. The moment you start explaining your pain to people who benefit from it. Most people aren't weak because they lack power. They are weak because they misplace it. They hand it away piece by piece to every opinion, every apology, and every false connection that keeps them chained to validation. The man realized he had been doing this for years. Every time he over-explained, every time he apologized for things he didn't do, every time he stayed in conversations that drained him because leaving felt impolite. He thought he was being patient, he was being predictable, and predictability is what predators look for. There is a hidden hunger inside every human being, the hunger to be understood. The man used to tell himself that if they just understood him, they wouldn't hurt him. But the truth is darker. Most people don't respond to your feelings. They respond to what those feelings allow. Weakness lives in the gap between what you hope people will do and what they actually do. Think about a woman in her late 20s who is the friend everyone calls when they are falling apart, the colleague who covers for everyone else, the daughter who manages her family's emotions. She is beloved. She is also exhausted. And one day she realizes something quietly devastating. Every person in her life takes her for granted because she has trained them to, by being available, by being forgiving, by being endlessly patient. She didn't need to become cruel. She just needed to stop teaching people that her kindness was unlimited. That is where her power returned. Not in a dramatic confrontation, but in a quiet internal decision. I am no longer the person who absorbs everything. Power doesn't always have to be taken back. Sometimes it is just a matter of stopping the leak. This is the trap almost no one talks about, because being needed feels good. It feels like love. It feels like meaning. But for the wrong people, your usefulness is the only reason they stay. The man had spent years confusing dependence with devotion and being needed with being valued. The friends who only called when something was broken. The partner who softened only when she wanted something. The colleagues who praised him publicly and competed with him privately. He thought he was building loyalty. He was building a slow exit for everyone except himself. Because the moment you stop being useful to those people, they don't see your worth. They see the absence of their convenience. There is a Rumi line that captures this perfectly. Set your life on fire. Seek those who fan your flames. Most people don't fan your flames. They warm their hands and then complain when you stop burning. The man stopped lighting himself on fire to keep others warm. Not because he stopped caring, but because he finally noticed who actually cared back. A kind person without limits is a resource. A kind person with limits is a force. Real kindness is selective. It requires wisdom. It knows when to close the door, when to disappear, and when to say enough. For most of his life, the man had kept every door open. He answered every message and gave every person the benefit of the doubt 10 times over. He believed that closing a door on someone was an act of cruelty. What he didn't understand was that some doors, when left open, are how the wolves get in. Machiavelli wrote that he who builds on the people builds on mud. He didn't mean all people are unreliable. He meant that the crowd's morality shifts with the wind. One day they praise your compassion. The next, they exploit it. The man started closing doors. Not loudly, not with announcements, just quietly and permanently. The friend who only called when he needed something received silence. The family member who used guilt as a leash received distance. The partner who softened only when she wanted something was released. He didn't explain, and he didn't justify. He just stopped showing up to places that had stopped earning him. And here is what he learned. The people who feel entitled to your access will be furious when you remove it. The people who actually loved you will simply adjust. That is the test. Anger reveals entitlement. Acceptance reveals love. The closed door becomes one of the most powerful tools you will ever own. He didn't become a different person. He became a layered one. There was still kindness in him, but now it had walls around it. Still generosity, but now it had filters. Still love, but now it had standards. He learned what Machiavelli understood 500 years ago, that morality without strategy becomes self-destruction disguised as virtue. People don't always care how pure your heart is. They notice how powerful your presence feels. He stopped trying to be liked and started being respected. And the difference between those two things is the difference between surviving in this world and being slowly consumed by it. The strategic self isn't fake, it is protected. It still feels deeply and loves intensely, but it has stopped offering its softest parts to people who haven't earned the right to hold them. Lao Tzu wrote, "He who knows others is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened." The man finally knew himself. He knew his triggers, his patterns, and his old wounds. And once you know yourself that clearly, you stop falling for the same traps. You stop trusting the same kinds of people. You stop confusing intensity for love and chaos for passion. The man I met years later was not colder than the man I had known before. He was clearer. He still smiled. He still cared. He still loved. But he no longer offered any of those things as currency to buy people's approval. He offered them as gifts to the few who had earned them. Nothing around him had become safer. He had become sharper. And that is the difference almost no one teaches. Goodness is not the problem. Unprotected goodness is. A kind person without wisdom is a target. A kind person with wisdom is a force the world cannot easily move. You don't have to become hard or cynical or lose your heart to protect it. You just have to stop offering its softest parts to people who would rather break it than hold it. Stop being easy to break, not by becoming cruel, by becoming clear about who you are, what you are willing to give, and who has earned the right to receive it. If something in this story feels familiar, subscribe and walk this road with us. Every week we go deeper into the kind of wisdom most people only find after they have already been broken once. I will see you next time.